Do you realize the importance of the pelvis beyond its structure? Do you know it's the engine of our body? Tune into today's podcast to learn why it's the engine of our body as I have a wonderful conversation with Suzanne Scurlock, founder of Healing from the Core, as we discuss all about the energetics of the pelvic space. Hello, friends. This is Lynn Schulte, and you are listening to the Birth Healing Summit podcast. We are here for meaningful conversations that will transform the way you work with pregnant and postpartum clients. Whether it is a new perspective, tool, or technique, you'll be able to implement it into your practice today. I invite you to sit back, listen with an open mind, and grab the golden nugget today's guest has to offer. Now let's get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode. And boy, do I have a treat for everyone today. We are going to be talking with Suzanne Scurlock. Suzanne, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here. Yay. So Suzanne and I are going to be talking about the energetics of the pelvis. And I can't tell you how excited I am about this conversation because this is my love, Suzanne. And I think you all are going to be listening in here. You're going to feel the passion that both Suzanne and I have for this space. And so Suzanne, tell us, what do you mean by the energetics of the pelvic space?
Well, in the workshop that I teach for women, Healing the Pelvic Core, one of the core pieces that we offer that doesn't get offered much of anywhere else is the fact that the pelvis is the engine of the body. In my 6 wisdom areas that I talk about in Reclaiming Your Body, the pelvis is the engine. It is where all the energy travels through to fuel everything you want to do in your gut, in your heart, in your bones, in your legs, and your feet, and in your brain and thinking. That if the pelvis isn't good, then, or if it's damaged, or let's say you've had a birth that really went awry or was very challenging, like my first delivery was, it cripples you as a woman because the engine of your body is now running on 2 cylinders rather than the 8 that it should be running on. And so this is one of the pieces that I get so excited about, because as I healed my own pelvis, I began to realize that my juice, my life force, my creativity was returning because I was dealing with the pelvic space energy center that I desperately needed to reclaim.
Yeah, I see that all the time in my clients, Suzanne, and that's
Yep.
why I'm so excited about this. But I want us to, can we dive in a little bit deeper into the engine of the body? Because I think a lot of us think that we're just these walking heads. I mean, so many people are just living in our heads and we're these little bobbleheads walking around through life. And I know people are very aware of their heads, and some people are aware of their hearts, that we need to live in that heart space. But I think this idea of the pelvis being the engine of our body, I call it the home. It's really our home. Why is it? Why is the pelvis this energy? Why is it the home of our body?
Well, I think that if you go back in time, historically, it's been known for millennia that for men and women, but particularly for women because of our capacity to recreate, to create life, new life, the pelvis is the area where, if you look in the Vedic traditions from India and parts east, you will see that the root chakra emanates from this area of the body. So when people are damaged in some way, or have lost sensation, or have a physical problem there, the root chakra is diminished. And you'll see that whether you're talking about looking at how when you're doing things with that system, how is much harder to generate qi and move it. If you go to Chinese medicine, the GVCV point, the governing vessel central channel point that sits in the perineum between the vaginal opening and the anus, is a pivotal energy doorway through which Chinese medicine people have known for millennia, 5,000 years or more. When that point is blocked due to injury, episiotomy,
There's
you got it, rape, incest, you name it, the things that can cause that area to just will close the door and that doorway is a main gate for energy to flow through the body. I'll tell just a little story on this. My then husband was, he's an acupuncturist for 40 years, but he would call me in when he needed a nurse to hold someone's hand because he needed to do that GVCV point. He would needle it, which, as you can imagine, is not really comfortable.
Yeah.
But what was fascinating, I said to him afterwards, why do you do that point? That's just like, it's got to be bad. He goes, no. When I have tried to balance someone's energy using every other thing I know about acupuncture meridians and the way that the right supports the half and blah, blah, blah. He said, when nothing works, that doorway is the problem. And the only way I know how to do it is to needle it. And it was fascinating because I would come into the room and the person would be there with a little sheet over their bottom half. And I would hold their hand and look at their face to kind of reassure them while he was doing this point. Well, when he would open up that point, and you could kind of often just feel them kind of flinch, but the color would return to their faces.
Wow.
That was fascinating for me. And on about the fourth or fifth time I did this for him, it began to dawn on me that this was a major gateway for energy flow into the body. For it
Okay.
to happen that fast.
Right.
And so here's Vedic tradition talking about energy flow moving forward. We know with Kundalini experiences that that's a huge door opening for people. We know that in Chinese medicine, there's a gate there that they consider to be a huge one. So all of these things, and then I started to look at how sexuality, I started looking at how our sensuality, how our flow of life force through us, when it's moving well, life is effortless.
Yes.
When it's not, willpower comes in, and you can power through stuff, but you're working really hard, which is what I did in the 2 years after my first delivery, which was so traumatic to that area, that part of my body. I could power through because I was really inspired by what I was doing in life, but I was working really hard. And as I began to heal in that area, then my whole perceptual lens on the world widened back out, and I had access again in a more effortless way to my creativity, to growth, to everything I needed to do. Yeah.
Oh,
Is that
it's
is that what you asked me about?
yes, yes.
Okay.
I just what keeps I'm stuck at just a little bit because I know what it is, but I want to just clarify for others. Like you talked about the root chakra.
Uh-huh.
Could you explain a little bit more about what the root chakra is, what chakras are for those that might not understand? And then why is the root chakra so important for us?
So the root chakra is the chakra. Okay, so let's talk about chakras first.
Yes, yes.
I spent 10 years studying chakras with a metaphysician, and she used to say that every acupuncture point, every joint, every organ system in the body has its own chakra. It has like a vortex of energy that brings energy through from the area around it, generates a little more and moves it on up through the system. So, and as she said, she used to say, we generally talk about the 7 main chakras in the body are the ones that people will look at today. Which, if you really want to know the truth, throughout the whole body, it's almost like chainmail, the way that these vortices cross over each other and provide an energy field and almost a protection for the
Wow.
whole body. So, but she used to say that the 7 or 8 major ones, the first one is the root chakra, which comes out of the root or the pelvic floor. And then the second one is in just below the navel in the dantian area in martial arts. Third one is in the solar plexus. Fourth one is the heart. Fifth one is at the throat. Sixth one is at the third eye. And the seventh one is at the top of the head and moves out. The eighth one is in a space above your head, depending on what system you grow in. Now, I studied with 3 or 4 different people, and each of them had slightly different takes on it. And then, of course, Carolyn Mace came along and sort of popularized it all.
Yeah.
But what she says about it kind of dumbs it down. So I thought, well, having spent all those years studying it, I thought, okay. But here's the deal: that root chakra, that base energy flow that comes in from the earth beneath us and moves into that chakra is the main engine of everything else. So if it's closed down, if someone walks around living in their head,
Mhm.
and there's not a lot of energy in your root chakra, and it's not providing more flow to the dantian, to the second chakra, then to the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. Then what begins to happen is there's a depletion in the whole system, the whole physical system. What she taught me, which I found was fascinating, she said she actually taught us how to take a pendulum and hold it about this far over each one of those chakras.
Yeah.
And you could see which ones were flowing well, which ones were tiny. In a chakra that's actually generating flow and moving it forward to the next chakra, you'll see a circle about this big that moves around that chakra in the right direction, which would be clockwise in this hemisphere. From what I understand, it's counterclockwise in the southern hemisphere, but I've never really tried it down
Right.
there.
Yeah.
I don't know. But so this is kind of an interesting piece, because people who have depletion in their root chakra for some reason, could be a fall, it could be trauma, sexual trauma, physical trauma, could be a bad
Emotional
hard delivery, it could be emotional, that's right.
and
uh,
verbal. I find verbal and emotional abuse.
Right,
Yeah.
that can affect that root chakra. But
Yeah.
she said you'll almost always see chronic illnesses start to show up, as in cancers. And she said if you are reading someone's chakras when they get on your table and you find that that root chakra is really small, look for a chronic illness like cancer.
Wow.
And I, across the 10 years that I studied with her, I saw that. And it
Wow.
was really kind of spooky.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, there are other things that, so it's not a hard and fast rule of thumb, but see here again, when you have a body, my body, that is supposed to be running on 8 cylinders and it's running on two
Mhm.
because of something that's happened in that part of the body, everything else is going to suffer because of it. So the
Yeah.
immune system is obviously going to suffer. So a cancer would have an easier time, like
Mhm.
grabbing a hold and being able to take over a given area of the body. So it made sense to me in a way. Is that
Mhm.
helpful with the chakras? Have I explained them enough?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
I think so. And I think that along with that governing point of the acupuncture being right there in that
Right,
perineum, those two alone, the root chakra and that governing point alone, are just two huge indicators of the
right.
importance of this
Mm,
area. And, just like you said, I see it all the time in my clients because I'm working with pregnancy and postpartum, and
right.
just the disruption, the disconnect from this
Yep.
space.
Yep.
And I've also learned too, and I'm sure you know this, that in Chinese medicine, they call the womb the second heart in the body. And so
Yes.
we have
Yes.
the physical heart in our chest, and then our womb is the second heart in our chest. And it's so helpful when we help to connect those two spaces in our clients. And
Mm,
yeah, I also love working with the dantians you talked about. So the dantians are a special energy center,
right.
Chinese medicine, right?
Right.
So the head, the mind, the head, the
Mhm.
heart, and then the womb space.
Right. Right. And they would call those the three chow in Chinese medicine.
Okay.
Primary chow, secondary chow, three chow. And I know just enough to be dangerous about this because I was married to him for 32 years. So I learned a lot about Chinese
Yeah.
medicine I might not otherwise have known.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
So so this is so the way in which we cultivate a relationship with our pelvises and with that energetic space that should be humming along in our pelvis
Yeah.
says everything about how much energy we have available to do what we came here to do at a soul level.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, you can be like me. I mean, I was high on inspiration in the first couple of years after Eliza was born. I just started teaching craniosacral. I was all excited and I was young-ish, but I was exhausted all the time. And I
Mm,
got sick all the time. And it was because I had damage there that I was not able to heal until I got somebody to explain to me what was going on and helped me begin to heal it, which is how healing the pelvic core was born.
awesome.
And
Yeah.
yeah, Yeah.
Yeah, I totally experience the same thing, Suzanne, when when you have blocks or you're not connected to that pelvic space. I say that I'm a big fan of Tammy Lynn Kent's work. Are you familiar with Tammy Lynn Kent and Wild Feminine?
I do know Tammy Lynn Kent, and I've started her book 3 times, and I have never quite gotten into it, which is terrible because I can see, I mean, I'm always excited about
Yeah,
it, but I never, I'll start it and then it'll get put down. So,
yeah,
yes, but I've
yeah.
heard good things about how she talks about all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like there's a map of the pelvis that is so spot on.
Wow.
And the pelvis, like when you learn to read the map of the pelvis, it shows you how you're showing up in the world.
Wow. Oh, I'm
And
gonna now I definitely want to
oh,
finish
yeah,
that book.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so it is, I've taken her work and kind of made it my own and using her principles. And I have to tell you, it does not lie. The body can't lie. And the energetics of that pelvic space show
Mhm.
you how you're showing up in a moment to moment basis.
Right.
And I would share this pelvic map idea with audiences when I'm talking to groups, and I would have
Mhm.
women come up to me afterwards and go, and I do this visualization of the pelvic space.
Huh?
And people would come up to me and go, I saw this. And I go, well, that represents da 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 da. And they're like, oh my God, that's so true. So
Yeah.
it's just so fun. There is so much magic and so much uh wonderful stuff in this pelvic space, Suzanne. And
Mhm.
I think that's why I was so excited when I knew we were going to be talking about this today, because it really does change. What happened was I learned Tammy's stuff and I started implementing it in my work. And then I kept hearing women come back, or actually friends of my clients come back and go, well, you changed Susie's life. You changed
Wow.
Amy's life. And I'm like, that
Right.
wasn't my intent, but
Right.
you shift the
But when yeah.
energy.
Yes.
You
Yes.
shift the energy and you reconnect someone back to this engine of the body, and they
Yeah.
do change.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that that's one of the gifts of everything that we do. So let's just talk for a minute, because when you talk about the pelvic space, I don't know that every woman understands the kinds of things that can cause an impairment in this
Mm,
area.
okay.
So you can have a broken coccyx or sacrum. I had a
Yep.
broken sacrum. You can have pelvic floor trauma, as in an episiotomy. You can have a fall on a bicycle handlebars so that the pubes are malaligned. You can have a delivery that goes south and there's a fistula and or you can have forceps trauma to the vaginal or vulvar area. You can have all manner of different things that can happen nerve wise
Yeah.
to pelvic space. And that can be something like surgery, where
Mm,
they weren't paying any attention to where the nerves actually run to hold on to their function in a way that should be done. You can have things happen to the anus and to trauma in that area. All of these kinds of things will negatively impact the ability of what you call the pelvic space to function well.
let's not forget the
And
bladder, the uterus, and the bowel.
yeah,
you know,
yes,
those
yes,
major organs that are
right.
housed in this space too. All of
That,
that,
yeah, exactly.
all of
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah. A cystocele, a rectocele, a uterine prolapse, um, all of those, all of those will impact the capacity of the pelvis to show up and be vital and alive and available, so that that engine hums with life, as opposed to kind of limping along on 2 cylinders, I call it. I wish
Yeah.
I could find an analogy that wasn't a car analogy, but that's the one that people, they get it, right? It's like
Sure. Yeah.
everybody understands.
Yeah. Well,
And
because
before,
it's the
yeah,
engine, like you said,
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So Suzanne, what would you want practitioners to know? People who are working with issues in this area. What
Right.
feels important for them to understand?
One of the things that I think is important for them to understand is that people will show up with all kinds of symptoms, and they'll have stories about those symptoms, but it may not be whatever the root cause is. So let me give you an example. So a woman may come in who has a uterine prolapse or a cystocele, and so the lymph system isn't moving well through the pelvis. And so she will simply tell you that life hasn't been the same, and she's feeling very lazy because she doesn't want to get up and do things, and that she's really pretty mad at herself for the fact that she's been feeling so lazy, and why in the world can she not get it together? And when you do the examination, which as a pelvic floor specialist, you would be able to do, I would read the system, but I'm not a pelvic floor specialist, so I wouldn't do an examination at that intimate a physical level. You will see that something is definitely a problem there, and it doesn't have anything to do with laziness. It doesn't, certainly doesn't have anything to do with being angry at yourself because you can't function the way you should be able to, or you will have, I've seen women come in who a childbirth or a trauma of some kind has affected their functioning, and their spousal unit, male or female, is blaming them for the fact that they don't have enough energy. And so they're feeling like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? It's so universal for women to blame themselves before, and blame themselves before they even understand that this is something they may or may not have had control over. And it's something that can be healed, but they can't do it without help from you or me, or someone who can read the system and help them get out from under the blaming, self-blame, and step into whatever physical and emotional healing needs to take place there.
Yeah, oh, so true. And I think the big message I get there from what you just said, Suzanne, is that it's not just always physical.
Oh, it's rarely physical. Well, it will often have a physical counterpart, but the physical counterpart will have an emotional counterpart that is not helpful to the healing process.
Yes. On an energetic level, a prolapse can be a lack of support in their life.
Yes.
And so I to me, that is my love and my joy, and I'm sure it's yours too, because you're so good at it. But really getting into that root cause of what's beyond what we're is just presenting here, like what's at that deeper level that's really being held in those tissues. And that's, I feel, where the magic is.
Yeah. And yet, I tend to, sometimes women will come in with an emotional component of no support, but they can't actually do anything about that no support until you, as the therapist, help them get that prolapse back where it belongs. Either get them to a good pessary therapist that can help with that, get them to whatever they need. And in the meantime, they can have all the lack of support in the world. They don't have the energy to deal with it until you help them deal with the physical. About 50% of the time, I'll find people coming in with the emotional reason, I can't do this. And I'll say, well, let's look at the physical component here, because we've got to get you back your energy. And unless and yes, we need to, I recognize that piece you're giving me right now, but I also know that you can do everything in the world to help yourself move out of that lack of support place. You're still going to have the prolapse. And so let's see if we can work both of these together.
They're married, right? They're woven together.
Right.
And that's why I think the physical work, the hands-on work that us as, those that are allowed to do intravaginal work, when you marry that with the energetics, with that emotional guiding support that we can offer our clients to explore their space themselves and really get to their own answers, that's truly where the healing lies.
Yes. Well, and where it can be completed. What I do in healing the pelvic core, is we teach them anatomy, physiology. We go through the whole process of what are your limiting beliefs? What do you believe about yourself? And then we help them create a new message that's the antidote to their old messages. And then we actually do ceremony where they get held, clothing on, because most of the people in my workshops are not pelvic floor specialists, but
Yeah.
where we run energy right through the pelvic core, through the pelvic floor. Sometimes women will want to have a thumb held on that GVCV point to enter that doorway. And it is remarkable
Mhm.
how the again, the faces of the women on the last day of this workshop are lit up. Something has occurred, something has gotten turned on between all of these factors. They learn their anatomy and physiology. We teach them about messages and emotionally get in touch with it. And then we offer them a physical change, not as complete or specific as you would as a pelvic floor specialist. But I got to tell you, there are a lot of women that leave that course and go look up, where is their pelvic floor specialist in my area? Because I have, my vaginismus is much better, but I know it can be even better if I go
Yeah.
see someone specific who does this work. So it's an exciting time to
Yes.
be linking up with someone like you, because I'm doing it. I'm literally ushering women into the room of, you can do something about your pelvis,
Yeah.
and you can do it. Another woman can help you with it. And there's this whole group of specialists out there called pelvic floor specialists who can help you. If you have something really gnarly, they can help you with it. And I know because they helped me with what I had going on after that delivery. That was a big part of what helped me regain and continues to help me regain form and function in my pelvic floor. Yeah.
Yeah. And, as we all know, it's never too late to heal. And I just love the work that you're doing, Suzanne, what you're putting out into the world, because it's so needed and it's
I
so,
agree. And I love what you do. I totally, I'm so excited by your specialty and how you're looking at birth healing and pelvic floor. I mean,
yeah.
it's an exciting time to be alive as women right now.
Yes, it is. As you were just talking there about what you do at Healing from the Core, that pressure on that perineum, that's in a couple of my courses of just my acute care course. Like, I would love labor nurses to know how to just put, whether it's they could do a cool or a warm compress to that perineal area and just hold it there for a mom, a new mom, to help them to reconnect back to that space. Could you imagine what that could do just to the
Yeah.
explanation, the speeding
Healing
up
potential.
healing? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it occurs to me just the way that, because I teach craniosacral therapy as well. Just the way that I would love for every newborn to have a well-trained craniosacral therapist do a newborn protocol on every baby that's born. I would also like to see every mother get what they need to bring them back into their pelvis and heal whatever occurred during
Yeah.
to speed up the healing
Could you
process.
imagine the world, how different it would be?
It would be immensely different. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I
Yep.
think that's why you and I are so passionate about the work that we're putting out into this world, because we know the
Yeah.
immense change that it can hold for our world. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I would love for every person to have, their bones helped put back to their original position, get, like you said, heal that, whatever happened in that birth. And that instantaneously changes the relationship between mom and baby. You get babies
Right.
getting, sacral therapy, they can come more into their body. Oh my goodness
Right.
graciousness. That
Right.
is,
Right. And the simple things that we can actually help with, like torticollis,
yes,
sucking reflex issues, startle things, where the digestive issues, cranial vault and vagus nerve issues, all of this kind of thing can be helped so much in a baby who has the balancing effect of having a really good newborn treatment from a very qualified therapist
yeah,
is exciting.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Well,
absolutely.
this has been fun. I love
Thank you.
love once again connecting with you. This is
Oh,
marvelous.
thank you, Suzanne, so much. So, what's one last piece of advice you want people to know or to remember about the energy of the pelvic space? Anything?
Well, I think the one thing I would want to say to people is, please remember that just because you may have had trauma to this area, it can always heal. Some healing will take longer than others, depending on how long it's been since it was injured. But the healing is out there, and there's never been a better time historically for women, because we now have a plethora of pelvic floor specialists out there now that really weren't there 20 years ago. We
Yeah.
also have a lot that's been written about the anatomy of the pelvic floor, about the anatomy of pleasure, about the anatomy of orgasm, all the things that help women's pelvises light up and bring us into our creative potential. There's so much more out there today than there was when I began teaching healing the pelvic core 20 years ago. So it's
Awesome.
exciting. It's an
Yes.
exciting time to be there.
Yes.
And what you're doing, Lynn, is also very, very exciting. So thank you as well, my
Thank
dear.
you. Oh, I so appreciate our friendship, our bond of common interest in helping to get our work out into the world. And the biggest piece I want to take away from this conversation, Suzanne, is when we reconnect to that pelvic space, we are more in our ease and grace and flow, and that we don't have to effort so much.
That's right. That's
And
right. That's exactly.
yeah,
Yes.
so that's just another important reason that we need to reconnect back in and really help mamas heal in this pelvic space, the energetics, the engine of the body, the pelvis. Suzanne, thank you so much. Thank you everybody for listening in. Please stay connected to your pelvic space. Connect in as best you can. Get healing if you need it. Know the engine of your body is that pelvic space. Thank you so much. We'll see y'all in the next episode. Here's smoother births and faster recoveries, everybody. Take care. Today's podcast was brought to you by the Institute for Birth Healing. To discover more, visit instituteforbirthhealing.com. To claim $50 off of any online course, use coupon code podcast50 at checkout. Till next time, I'm Lynn Schulte, founder of the Institute for Birth Healing.